31st of October, 1999, Halloween night. New York City lights are glowing. But 60 miles south of Nantucket, over the Atlantic Ocean, EgyptAir Flight 990 cruises quietly at 33,000 feet. On board are 217 passengers and crew, including dozens of Egyptian military officers returning from training assignments in the United States. For everyone on the aircraft, the Atlantic Ocean is a silent, dark blanket below. At 1:49 a.m., the aircraft begins an unexpected descent from cruise altitude. Moments later, communication is lost. What investigators would uncover was not a bomb, not a known mechanical failure, but a terrifying 103-second struggle inside the cockpit. A struggle that would spark one of the most controversial investigations in aviation history. Today, we revisit the mystery of Flight 990, an event that challenged international diplomacy and raised difficult questions about trust inside the cockpit. This flight carried 2 full flight crews, standard practice for ultra-long routes. Relief First Officer Gamil El-Batouti, a veteran pilot with thousands of flight hours, entered the cockpit earlier than usual and took the right-hand seat. A little later, Captain Ahmed El-Habashi left the cockpit briefly, leaving Batouti at the controls. The cockpit voice recorder captures a calm environment, then a sequence of quiet remarks in Arabic. Shortly afterward, the autopilot is disengaged manually. From this moment forward, everything changes. Almost immediately after the autopilot disconnects, the aircraft begins a steep nose-down descent. Power levers reduced to idle. The jet starts dropping rapidly toward the ocean. Inside the cabin, the sensation would have been unreal. Weightlessness, turbulence, and confusion. Captain Abashi fights his way back into the cockpit. The CVR records him urgently asking what is happening, while the aircraft continues descending at a dramatic rate. Data from the flight data recorder revealed something extraordinary. Both pilots appeared to input opposite elevator commands at the same time. One commanding nose-up recovery, the other commanding nose-down. On a Boeing 767, the elevators can move independently under certain conditions. As a result, the aircraft experiences what engineers call a split elevator condition, where each side of the tail is responding to a different control input. Airframe stress builds rapidly. During the descent sequence, the right engine eventually separates from the wing due to extreme aerodynamic loads. It is chaos, a mechanical giant physically tearing under pressure. The wreckage was later discovered on the floor of the Atlantic, around 250 feet below the surface. The US Navy and the NTSB carried out a massive recovery operation, retrieving both the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder. When investigators analyzed the data, they did not find evidence of a control surface jam during the critical moments. Instead, the controls appeared to respond to manual inputs from inside the cockpit. Based on this, the NTSB concluded that the descent was the result of intentional control movements. But that conclusion would not be accepted by everyone. Egyptian authorities strongly rejected the suicide conclusion. They described First Officer Batouti as a respected professional and family man. Their investigation suggested that a possible mechanical malfunction, including failure within tail control components, could have triggered the descent. They argued that the crew may have been fighting a runaway condition rather than each other. American investigators tested the recovered components extensively, but reported that they could not reproduce a jam consistent with the recorded flight data. The result? 2 nations, 2 investigations, 2 very different conclusions. Because intent was part of the US theory, the FBI assisted by reviewing possible psychological and workplace factors affecting Batouti. Reports mention that shortly before the flight, a senior EgyptAir executive, Hatem Rushdie, who was also on board, had allegedly criticized Batouti's conduct and flying privileges. Some analysts proposed that this conflict may have been relevant. However, and this is critical, no final, universally accepted motive has ever been proven. The idea remains a theory, debated to this day. In the end, the official summaries remain divided. The United States attributes the descent to deliberate pilot action. Egypt attributes it to possible mechanical malfunction. What is not disputed is the loss. 217 people, families, officers, engineers, children, gone. A memorial in Rhode Island faces the Atlantic, engraved with their names. It is a reminder that aviation is built on trust, not only in machines, but in the humans who guide them. Flight 990 also intensified global conversations about cockpit safety, pilot well-being, and monitoring. Discussions that continue shaping aviation today. If you want more thoughtful investigations into cases that changed aviation forever, subscribe and stay with us. Every crash has a story, and every story deserves to be told with truth and respect.